years as wildlife biologist within Green River region. He's worked both as a private lands biologist and currently as the public lands biologist overseeing sloughs and Higginson's,
Higginson Henry.
Yeah, what he said.
H&H.
There you go. Ryan Harris is relatively new. One of the 2 regional biologists for the state, for the Green River region, covering 13 counties within the region, in wetland and stream restoration, and a degree from Wildlife and Fisheries from West Virginia U. The questions that were in the newsletter that sort of prepped the panel listed as such. What are the plans, like a 5-year plan for the Greenbelt, habitat design or expansions, connections relative to the hospital or anything else? We're discussion therein. What is the state biologist's recommendations for how to mow, where to mow, when to assist in people and wildlife, such as different areas on the Greenbelt that need different applications or species variations, such as Miller's Mill to Fairwood Drive, or different landscape topographies therein. Would you be open to eliminating our failed native plot on Old Clarkford Road? I told you to mow it, but it's still a topic comes up.
Start with that discussion.
Any plans for enhanced wildlife habitats, maybe monarch watch stations or watch station there? How do you think our Greenbelt compares with others in the air, with others, Milwaukee and Toledo? And the only reason for Toledo is that's one of the national festivals, and that came from me. What is your policy for spraying? Where are the wildflowers and some tree species normally seen in the past are not there now? Is the hospital and their Audubon habitat trails planned to be incorporated into the Greenbelt? And are there events or landscape planning that the Audubon Society could help with to expand public interaction and appreciation of the Greenbelt's wildlife landscape? That last sentence is the original and real reason, other than the other supportive questions, for the panel. So how can the Audubon Society help? How can we make plans? What plans are happening and coordinating going forward rather than sort of not? All right? You guys are at the table.
Oh, we're at the table. Physically at the table.
Physically at the table. And if you want to show samples, or there's I got the 2 liters, but not the the assumption is you all would talk a bit, either back and forth or one, and then after a bit, then have a discussion.
Okay.
So.
Well, I don't mind to start, and there were several questions relative to the Greenbelt. So if it's okay with you all, we'll start there and ask questions at any time, and we'll go from there. So I didn't put a big presentation together, but you asked about the Greenbelt. And the Greenbelt, for the city of Owensboro, there's 2 portions of the Greenbelt. There's a city and a county portion of the Greenbelt. So Ross takes care of a small portion. But we try to plan collectively between the city, county, and the state transportation department. Right now, we have.
I need to have, sorry, Ross Lee from the county was invited, and he had an event come up. So that's the reason we don't have a city and county. We're not just picking on Amanda. Well, I guess we are.
I'm here, pick on me. I'm here, pick on me.
Anyway, Ross was invited, so I just wanted to everybody. Sorry about that.
So we have a lot of discussions collectively as a group about taking advantage of any opportunity we can for funding expansions to the Greenbelt. Of course, collectively as a city, we would like to see the Greenbelt reach from Mid Halls all the way down and around to the far east end where it's at now for us, which is Yule's Heritage Park. And we're looking every chance we get for connectors into neighborhoods and shopping centers. The point of the Greenbelt shouldn't be you have to get in your car and drive and park to use the Greenbelt. It should be you all be able to walk through your neighborhood and get onto the Greenbelt at some point close to your home in a short walking distance. So that is our goal. We've been working on the Greenbelt for 30 plus years. We probably have upwards of $20 million into the 16 and a half miles we have now. Most of that money came through transportation funds that were either federal or state, along with some matching funds from the city. Our Greenbelt primarily is 10-foot wide asphalt trail here in the city of Owensboro. And one of the questions that I was asked was about other Greenbelts. So this is kind of an overview map from our website that has the Greenbelt broke out in different color portions. So you've got the West Trail that's yellow, red, orange, and green, all the way to the newest portion that we have is blue east. And as you get to Horse Fork Park, that's where county starts on the east side and runs out. And he's got another portion there off Daniels Lane that kind of connects over, I think, maybe to Fox Run, if I'm thinking about that correctly. But other communities, I tried to look at what other communities in the state of Kentucky were doing with their Greenbelt to see what some of the differences were. So of course, we always like to compare ourselves to Bowling Green.
Yeah.
So looked at Bowling Green. Theirs is 6 foot to 12 foot wide. One thing that I noticed that I took a lot of pride in is they actually have portions of their Greenbelt that's gravel and dirt. Luckily, we don't have gravel and dirt portions in our community, but they also strive to link their community from one end to the other in Bowling Green. This is kind of some maps of theirs. It's a little harder to see because the pink is their primary trail. So in Paducah, they have a Greenway Trail as well. It's only 5 miles. Most of theirs is lit, but they still have portions that are gravel. So I am envious of the lit. They have a lot of solar lighting in Paducah. I am a little envious of that. I'd like to see us at some point at least light primary intersections and heavy use areas. Our police department doesn't like the thought of that, but that's where we differ.
Why?
Because it's one other area they have to be concerned about. If we're inviting people to come after hours.
Yes. Live patrol.
So that was Paducah's trail. This is Evansville's. This is something we're seeing more and more as we look at greenways across the nation, is them striping it down the middle like a roadway. If we have complaints about the Greenbelt, as far as usage, typically it's walkers that feel overcome by bike riders, or bike riders that think the walkers don't know how to walk, so they yell on the left, and then the walker walks to the left in front of the bicyclist. So that seems to be something that we're seeing more and more of, and they do that in Evansville. But again, Evansville is much like ours, but they only have a little less than 7 miles in their trail currently.
So is that a walking lane and a bike lane, or is that just left and right?
It's just left and right, like a road, basically. And this is kind of, it shows Evansville's greenway there. Now, another question that was asked was connectors. So, I'm sorry, I forgot I had Lexington on there. So Lexington has 8 separate trails that don't all connect throughout the community, which is a little interesting. Now, when you speak with their parks director, she will tell you they're trying to connect everything, but they, like us, when they have opportunities to create based upon roads that are handed over from city to county or state, and funding or developments that go in their community, that they want to require that developer to put a trail system in throughout that development, they're taking advantage of those as they come. This might be a little hard to see. This is, one of the questions was asked about connecting. So we currently have, this is the east side of town. So this is the bypass, and this little right through here is Highway 54. So this is the Hucks at Ragu Drive. So when the state handed over that portion of the bypass from 60 to 54 to us, we took advantage of that old off-ramp to create an east portion of the trail. So now you can come from the Heartlands neighborhood, cross at that light at Ragu Drive, walk down this path, and it's kind of the path to nowhere right now. But we took advantage of that opportunity when we had funding from the state, and they were handing that over to us, so it was kind of a trade. If you're gonna give us this, then we're gonna take it for here and evermore, help us develop this trail. So it runs down to what we call Lagoon Lane, which is off the old bypass road here, 603, and there's a parking area there. So if you drive down 603, or what I know is the old bypass, you're gonna see that kind of parking area in the middle of nowhere. Our goal is to get to the hospital. So right now, we've developed this portion. We've also come off 603 at where we'll have to cross, and there is a signal there now. And this black line is developed. So Regional Water has said they will develop a pathway here. And then in the developer's incentive for this parcel of land, they're required to connect those two for us. So once this is developed, that will be connected. At that point, Regional Water will work to fund and develop that trail. And then we'll be ready to cross Pleasant Valley. We'll be ready to cross 603 at Pleasant Valley to come out to the hospital. So it is our goal to get there. It's not going to be a quick process. Currently, we don't have anything else funded for this portion at the current time. We are on a hold until that developer starts the process of developing. This is that Cedarhurst Senior Living, and I forgive me, I'm totally drawing a blank right now. There is a development plan submitted for this that includes that walkway. So once that starts, then we'll start looking out at future funding years to fund that additional development out. So it is our goal to get to the hospital. I know that the county engineer, Mark Brasher, has been looking at some connectors on the back side of the hospital as well. I can't speak in a lot of detail to what those are, though. I apologize. And there is a signal at 603 now to make that crossing a little easier. Now this is, I don't know what this is. This is, okay, this is 54. So the state is widening 54 for all of us that live on the east side.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a nightmare for a while.
Again, still.
This is Highway 54 here, and this is Hayden Drive. So as part of the annexation agreement with Gulfstream and that development for Gateway Commons, he's required to put what we're calling a shared use path, the Greenbelt, along Hayden Drive. So it will be here at 54 and run all the way back into his shopping area. It ends at Fairview here, the extension of Fairview. We have a pretty good sidewalk through Fairview. When the state widens 54, they've agreed to put that shared use path along 54 from Fairview to Hayden Road. And then they've also agreed, as they widen Fairview Drive, to put that shared use path back to Horse Fork to connect to the Greenbelt.
Oh, yeah.
You say that they're putting a walking path on Hayden Road?
It will be along the side of Hayden Road. Like there's a section of it now in behind Aldi. So it will connect back to the shopping center.
Oh.
As each portion of his development goes up, they will add that walkway in.
I'm not sure where Hayden Road is. What's at the corner of Hayden and 54?
The Aldi in the old Kentucky 54 school
Okay,
right now.
okay,
It goes back into Gateway Commons
Yeah,
and connects
okay,
to 603 and,
gotcha.
New nursing home, new schools is all back in here.
yeah, Davis County Middle School.
So
Okay.
it's not the Hayden Road from Aldi's to Bruce and Dermott Road. It's not that section.
It is from 54 at the Aldi
Okay.
back into Gateway Commons. It will end at Fairview. So where Fairview intersects with Hayden, that's where that shared use pathway will end. So the State Transportation Cabinet has the 54 widening project. I think it's on like a 3-year schedule at this point. And then Fairview Drive will come following that. So this is obviously not something that's gonna happen overnight. But this is something the county, city, and the State Transportation Department have all agreed to. So we know that these portions will occur in the next 5 to 6 years, probably max, assuming funding doesn't change at the state level.
Now, you're gonna receive this as sarcasm, but it is not. A walking arch would be really cool. Over
Walking
54.
arch. You know, we asked for a walkway over Frederica, where Martin Luther King Loop, that portion of the trail crosses. We asked for a walkway over Frederica. Yeah, we've asked. Years ago, we asked, and it fell on deaf ears, so. The other piece of the Greenbelt, which I don't have a map of, part of the developer's incentive agreement with the city is to develop a connector from Mules Heritage Park, which is in behind Brook Hill. There's a city park that's right next door to Horse Fork Creek, and the Greenbelts meet there. So when Gulfstream purchased everything along Highland Point Drive, which is basically your Ashley store, and then you've got the Moore Collision Center, you've got Drake's and all those shopping centers through there. Part of his development incentive agreement was to connect that road, Highland Point Drive, to Yule's Heritage Park. Now, the bad thing is, at whatever time that was done, there was no requirement on time frame negotiated in that agreement. So he has no time frame beyond when his last parcel is developed. So that has to be done at the same time his last parcel on Highland Point Drive is developed. So at some point, you will have that connectivity from Brook Hill to those shopping areas and shopping centers, which will get you up to 54, close to the Gateway Commons area, and back around in that loop if you so choose. So those are, right now, the plans we're working on for connectivity for the Greenbelt. I don't think we have anything else really in the books for the Greenbelt on connectivity right now. As far as maintenance of the Greenbelt, we have 112 deeds and leases for property that the Greenbelt runs through. And so at any given point on the Greenbelt from the city's perspective in the 16 miles of trail, we may have rights to manage 10 feet off the trail, we might have rights to manage 100 feet off the trail. It's just dependent upon the specific location. It's a little bit of a nightmare sometimes to try to figure out what to manage and how to do that. We use contract mowing in the city. The city several years back went to a cost savings measure and eliminated multiple positions in our grounds department and went to hiring contractors to do mowing. So I would say 98% of the Greenbelt that's mowed that's not within a park space. For instance, the Greenbelt that runs through Fisher Park is mowed by staff on my team specifically. But really, other than that, everything's mowed by an outside contractor. So that does affect quality at times, and it also affects how we manage those relationships to get things done as well. I feel like that this was brought up here from one of the group members. I'm not sure who. You want to talk about this? You want to share this information with me and help me understand what I'm looking at, what concerns you have?
Okay, I'm concerned about the tree trimming practices and the mowing along the side of the Greenbelt. Maybe I need to stand up. When I moved here in 2012 and started walking the Greenbelt in the Lake Forest neighborhood, I thought, oh my goodness, all these wildflowers, and I didn't know what they were. So I thought, well, I'm going to learn the Kentucky wildflowers, and I went to all of Steve Hahus's wildflower walks that I could. And I'm learning these wildflowers, and I thought I can reinforce this each year and learn a few more. They're gone. All those wildflowers are gone because of mowing practices and spraying. And I brought some pictures, and it never occurred to me I could have put this on a disc.
Pictures are fine.
Huh?
Pictures are fine.
Well,
They're fine.
not when you're trying to explain to a group.
You want to pass it around?
Well, we
So
can.
if other people want to see it.
But where I have circled in red and where you can see where they have sprayed, and they keep pushing back the growth. When I started walking, it was about a riding mower's width ride. It is far greater than that now. They have sprayed, they've killed most of the underbrush. Like there were wild raspberries down at the end next to Miller's Mill Road. And I wouldn't have known they were wild raspberries, but I walked, there was a man that walks his dog every day, and he would tell me these things. And he told me about the pawpaw trees. And I was really excited. In Oklahoma, western Oklahoma, we didn't have pawpaw trees. We didn't have a lot of trees, period. And so then last fall when I walked, they had taken out several of those pawpaw trees. They were young. And it's just things like that. And I have to tell you, last spring, probably it was in March, late February or early March, I turned the corner to walk east, and I just stopped because of the mowing and the tree trimming. It really, really depressed me. And then so I continued to walk that morning, and they had gone along and topped off little straight growing trees. I mean, they're about that big around. They just topped them off. Some of them were above my head, some of them were about eye level. And then they have all these funny shoots and sprouts coming off of that, where they topped those trees. I have seen them take beaters, turn them up on the side, and just really it shreds the growing trees. So,
Well, what I will tell you is, and I hate that Ross isn't here because I don't want to throw Ross under the bus, that portion is county.
well, I knew that.
So,
I knew
and
that.
I'm not going to pretend that we do any better in some parts of the city, so please do not take it that way. But I will take this to Ross and show it to him. And my mind is also going to, I live in Lake Forest as well. My mind is also going to wondering, is that maintained by county or is that maintained by the neighborhood? And
No, it's
I don't
maintained
know
by the
that.
county.
Okay.
It's maintained, and I think some of the people in the neighborhood do some things along there, but it's not been detrimental. And I walked last fall going west, and there was a whole area of shrubs and trees just cleared out, and I don't know why.
Yeah. I know they topped all those trees down those medians in our neighborhood, and I remember thinking, what in the world? So I just wondered if those two were connected.
No,
So
they are not.
okay. So what I can do is I will take this to Ross and ask him a little bit about who does this work for them, who makes those decisions for them, and get him to get a response back to David for the next meeting.
Okay, and I did
pass that along.
I did try and make a list of the trees that I know are there and the wildflowers and the birds that I have seen. And this is going to affect the bird habitat without the brushy undergrowth. And one area, May apples, there were just a lot of May apples. And again, that was an exciting plant for me to learn. They were gone. Fortunately, they couldn't get down in a little low spot to get them, so there were still a few May apples, but not like the previous year. So, anyway, you got it.
Pardon me, is Lake Forest on both sides of the Greenbelt from at Miller's Mill is Lake Forest both sides? Is it one side? One
Just
side is
one.
Lake
It
Forest
goes
and the other side is?
From Miller's Mill, you go into Tanglewood and into Lake Forest, and that crosses over to Brook Hill. You have like Fairview Drive in the Brook Hill neighborhood,
Well,
and then over to
the-
Gills Heritage,
yeah,
by
the-
Horse Fork Park.
Yeah, but at Miller's Mill at the back, at the end parking lot, on one side, on both sides is Lake Forest, or is there?
Oh, I see
Um,
what you mean.
No,
If you're walking the Greenbelt and you're going from
There's two
Miller's
sides.
Mill down to Fairview, you have houses backing up on your right, and you have
Yes.
houses on your left.
Yes,
On
sir.
your left is Lake Forest, and he wants to know.
On the
if
right
one's
is
on your
Lake
right,
Forest
are
as
they
well.
also Lake
So it's
Forest?
both?
It's
Okay.
Tanglewood and Lake Forest. There's one little
Yeah.
section that's considered a different neighborhood, but it backs up there to the Greenbelt as well, right by the parking lot.
Gotcha.
Stephen
Yeah.
Chase.
Yes, sir.
I've got a question too from a little bit different perspective. I'm a cyclist, rides the Greenbelt often, and the condition of the pavement concerns me, and a lot of the problem with the pavement is the tree roots. I volunteer to go south during the winter so I can see what they're doing with their bike trails. And I've noticed that a lot of their bike trails, I don't want the tree But what they do along their bike trails where they have that kind of problem is they take like a trencher and it cuts the roots, and then they put I don't know if it's plastic, metal, or what it is, that they put in there, and then the pavement doesn't get bucked up the next year, because even if they go through and repave, it doesn't stay. The trees push it back up. And like I said, I don't want to get rid of the trees, but I'd rather the Greenbelt was smoother, as you well know, and Brook Hill, unless they've just done something about it, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
And also on the far west end, the pavement down there is really rough.
Yeah, down by Joe Ford.
One other thing I wish people knew, a lot of touring cyclists come through Owensboro. We're on the Trans-America route, and we're also on the Underground Railroad route. And a lot of those touring cyclists use the Greenbelt as well as some of our roads, but most of them aren't real well informed about where it goes, how to get there. And with the maps they've got, they come in and ride 54. I live out that direction. I live on Lane Road. And so they're trying to ride 54, not realizing there's a Greenbelt, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That they can
So-
safely ride. They want to come to Owensboro and find hotels, bike shops, all the normal kind of things. But there's no signage to tell them how to find it. In the same way, if you're on the Greenbelt, there's no signage to tell you how to find anything. And I'm amazed, since I travel a lot, I know where everything is. I'm amazed at people, it's like they're on the Greenbelt and they're in a different world. They don't know, there's a restaurant over here a block away, and people don't realize it.
A couple questions from that. One comment is, in this year's budget, the year that we're in now that will end June 30th, we have money to fund the beginning of replacing all the trailhead signage. That trailhead signage is out everywhere, has been out since the trail is original.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been updated, and that was, your comment there was a comment that the Bicycle Owensboro group made to us, that it would be nice at those trailheads if you had a star, you know, you were here on the map, and then go out and say, here's the shopping areas, here's the churches, here are some of the things adjacent to your location as you travel from this station to the next along the trail. So Brittany Klotzbach, that works in our office, is working on designing those with Greenwell Chisholm. So we hope to have the first one out. That will be Joe Ford. That will be the first one that we're working on. So we've got the Joe Ford in this year's budget, and we've got the signage there behind Center Court, or what used to be the Shively Park area. Mm-hmm. So those two should be done before the end of June this year, and then we're funding 2 more in next year's budget cycle with the intent between this year and the next 2 years to have all of those designed and replaced. And hopefully that will help some of that, because that's a comment we've heard multiple times, and finally been able to get it to the top to get that work done. Now, as far as the bicycle routes, what would be your recommendation? So when I'm hearing you say that, my thought is these people probably go to some kind of website to get information about those routes?
They get their information from Adventure Cycling. They're the ones that make the maps for that cross-country travel. And if you would inform the people at Adventure Cycling where your Greenbelt is, then they can put it on their maps, and that way people know they're there to use. Because like I said, I see them, like I said, I live out on that end, and I see them coming in 54 all the time, which is not the best cycling road we've got. and not realizing that they could go a block down and get on the Greenbelt and get to somewhere where they want to be. Because the only thing they have on their map is the main roads and their route. Well, this is off their route, but when they come across the country, they haven't been anywhere that sells beer, got a bike shop, or got a hotel for a couple of 100 miles. So often when they get to Owensboro, they're looking for those kind of things. And you would think the businesses in Owensboro would be glad to provide them if they would just have the information they needed to find them. So.
Right. Yeah, well, I can definitely reach out to that group and try to pass along as much information as we can, and hopefully they'll pick up on that and add that information, at least to the websites.
That'd be great.
And yeah, and we could connect that site to our website as well.
Yes.
And that'd be something we could put a link to them from our website as well.
They're probably gonna ask for a QR code, and your IT department can do that, or you can send me an email and I can send you one back.
Surprisingly enough, our IT department doesn't do QR codes. Brittany Klotzbach does QR codes for us.
Oh, well then
Poor
then
Brittany.
throw-
She has to learn how to do everything that none of us,
No, Brittany.
none of us know how to do.
You're right. And they would eat the QR codes up, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, to throw Ryan and Thomas into this conversation relative to the habitat of the Greenbelt and, I'm sorry, I'm a teacher, so I'm gonna make an analogy. When people come, class evaluations and things I suck on, or whatever, how I'm bad, sorry.
Oh,
Just go on, Dave, sorry. Things are developed like progress plans. But they sit me down and go, okay, Dave, you're terrible at this, you're pretty good at this, and you're really terrible at this. Let's work on this a little bit, and a little bit, and a little bit. And I want to use that analogy toward what Laverne was bringing in, and relative to, well, a couple of things of what the conversation is ideally about is how can we coordinate? Like, rather than having it be a circular firing squad of like, nope, this is that's county, that's like, this is Lakewood. Is there things out there that could be similar to a progress plan of, okay, if we want this sort of environment, these landscapes, these bird attractants, these things in a certain walkabout circumstance, what are the steps to do or have, and then have the plan and go, okay, here the county, here the city, here Lakewood, or here whatever. Here's what we'd like to do. Is that
possible? I mean, yeah, I mean, to throw something out for an example, some of this stuff, and it's really hard for me to tell the pictures. Invasive species, like that's the low-hanging fruit in my mind.
Sure.
You can see out there on the landscape right now, bush honeysuckle is starting to green up right now. That's an undesirable, and that has huge detrimental effects in our edge species and so forth down the line. So, I mean, I've got it over in Henderson. It's just running rampant, for example. And so we are actively trying to spray that right now. We've actually got a project in Eastern Kentucky on another WMA where we did a fall foliar application of herbicide when everything else has gone dormant to apply it when that bush honeysuckle is still green, and try to tackle it, trying to selectively kill that one species. But in almost every single hedgerow, fence row throughout Owensboro, you're going to find that one particular species. So that's just one particular one that you.
Is my trumpet vine part of that too?
Well, no. I mean, that's probably not the worst one anyways.
The hummingbirds like it.
Yeah.
So well.
What were you going to say?
One of the things I noticed on this list that you provided, partridge pea, yes, you put next to a note, it is great bird food, and that's correct. A lot of species I know, like you had introduced me, I previously worked in stream and wetland mitigation and restoration. On a lot of these mitigation and restoration sites, partridge pea was planted as a cover crop to help prevent erosion. Well, the problem with it is it ends up becoming the species that just chokes everything out. I mean, it will eventually kill any and every single plant in the area. It will kill oaks. It'll get so high and thick. And like Thomas was saying, invasive species, low-hanging fruit, if that's present, well, it should be maintained and managed so that way it doesn't kill off some of these other nicer species like, Virginia buttonwood, great plant, horsemint, bergamot, great-looking flowers. You want those, but you need to eventually manage and mitigate those species like partridge pea to prevent the loss of those nicer plants.
Yeah.
That sounds like a plan.
Well, yeah, that would be, yeah. But it'll be variable, and she mentioned 10 feet versus 30 feet or whatever it might be. I've not actually laid eyes on a lot of the actual Greenbelt, so I can't really speak to what's out there. I think a lot of it is Johnson grass, I believe, in some places. But I don't know if that really answers your question or not, but. I mean, there are ways you can say, okay, you can pick this particular spot and replicate a wildflower planting. There's steps you can do, absolutely. I mean, there's a, that's been written out by all kinds of different vendors and herbicides you would use, the planting techniques, the whole 9 yards. And you could replicate that on one end, the east side versus the west side for the most part, species composition and so forth. And going through the shrubs component, what shrubs could be planted. Those are easily things that could be recommended for sure. Do you want it? Do you not want it? That's another discussion. But yeah, that's possible. So, yes.
Well, one of the things about this Greenbelt is that it's a series of different habitats. If you start up at Miller's Mill, you have overgrown trees and everything's very close to the walkway. You get down past Fairview and you can cut through the woods by the pond. But you get over by Martin Luther King Loop and, it's like a whole different world. It's a whole different world. So I'm wondering if it might make sense, as Thomas was saying, if we focused on a couple of those areas and say, we're going to build this habitat to be the best it can be. And then move on to another one and try to do the same thing, because it would be overwhelming to say in these 16 miles we have prairie, we have ponds, we have waterfowl, we have soccer fields, we have all that stuff, all in one 16-mile loop. Not to mention the bicyclists.
Not to mention the bicyclists.
That come whooshing by. So anyway, that's my thought. That
It sounds like it boils down
if we break
to-
this up into something manageable and set some goals for those areas, maybe we can make some progress.
But I mean, it is challenging, and we deal with it on a daily basis on our public areas. I can go out and do the exact right thing. I mean, just to a T, the timing, the equipment. We've got everything laid out for us because we do it. And yet, in year 2, 3, and 4, there's so much more management to be done on this. And so that's the real sort of obstacle. I'm just going to be, I mean, it's not just hey, let's plant some bergamot. We've done this, and then in 5 years.
We tried to do a native grasses plot on the Greenbelt, and
one of the most challenging.
I'm not going to say it failed utterly, but because of that, it takes time and maintenance to do it right.
Yeah.
And we weren't very good at that. Us weren't very good at that.
Amanda, before we go too far, would you address what she's talking about, that mess that we left on the corner there?
Yeah, how do you address that? I 100% think the intention was good.
It was.
And I think the goal was good. I think the struggle is twofold. One is communicating with contractors on what to do and not to do. So shortly after maybe the first full season, our contractor came in and mowed it, and it wasn't supposed to be mowed. And it was clearly marked with pink flags not to mow, and yet he mowed on the other side of that. He also mowed over 182 saplings that we planted when you came in the back of the Heartlands through a stormwater project that our engineering department put together with one of the Catholic groups, I apologize, Mount St. Joseph. The Sisters of Mount St. Joseph helped us with that. And came in and mowed over saplings as well. So then we finally got that addressed as a not to touch zone, and then it literally was not touched. Wasn't split up and mowed, it wasn't strip mowed. It wasn't mowed once a year. Nothing was done with it at that point.
Well, it's a mess,
for 2 or 3 years.
I think we would all agree that you can just tear down whatever wire stuff is left there and bushwhack it and let it go, or whatever needs to be done.
Yeah, Bradford pears are blooming there now.
Oh, jeez. Oh, gosh.
Don't blow over my bird banner.
The yellow pole.
Now, one way to look at some of that kind of stuff, because So it may not have ended the way you wanted it, right?
No, it didn't.
The species composition wasn't there. But could you argue that when you first started to where you are now, is it better habitat for some of your bird species? Are you seeing more abundance of bird species at all because of the vegetation height or composition? Doesn't necessarily mean about the species, but the actual complexity of
You know,
the
that
species, the
brings me
habitat.
to another thought, which is that we do a monthly monitoring of bird species out at Virginia Miles behind the community college. And it would seem to me that even if it wasn't monthly, if we did some kind of regular species count of birds along a certain section of the Greenbelt, it would give us some information as to whether things are improving, whether they're deteriorating, you know, what's going on.
Yeah, well,
But if we don't know, you know, if we don't have the data, then we don't really.
but just take, for example, a 30-foot wide section that is 100 yards long. And you go from a mowed strip of just vegetation. It's mowed every single year, and then you go from year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4 that hasn't been mowed, for example, okay? Or maybe it's done mowing once and then it's let go for 3 years. You're gonna have that structure there. The species may not necessarily be there from a plant standpoint, but that's so much better than where you first started.
Well, you might wind up with sparrow habitat.
You absolutely should. You absolutely should. And so, is that a lot of money spent? Maybe not. Is it just a little tweak of some management potentially that can still get the desired outcome of better habitat? It may look a little ugly, a little rough around the edges, and the species composition may not be the bergamots from one end to the other. But from a birding standpoint, you may get some of your benefit. So, something to think about. I don't know what you think about that, but.
I would agree. The composition doesn't necessarily matter when it comes down to the fact of it being a grown, mature area, or not even mature, an area with enough of cover and habitat to provide for those species. Like Tom said, you don't need the bergamots, you don't need black-eyed Susans, you don't need, you know, milkweed in that area necessarily. But if it can provide habitat for selective species that you're looking to get, it's great. I mean, it really is, especially if you're after getting a sparrow habitat, or having a habitat for waterfowl, or having habitat for birds of prey to come and forage for mice and rats, for example. That's really what a goal kind of should be towards first, and then later on try to improve your composition by including some other management practices, intermediate seeding, a few things like that.
I'm just sitting here thinking about what's happened and what could happen. But the biggest problem sounds like if you go and do a project and you don't communicate directly with the maintenance people before you start, they're gonna do whatever they're gonna do and not paying attention to it, and they're gonna whack a whole bunch of stuff down. But if you were to talk with them before you start some project and involve them in the project, then it might work. But that seems like what happened to this project that we had, and to the one with the Catholic Church and so forth. It was after the fact, you know, it changed, but all the work was done first, and then it got screwed up, and then somebody needs to, you know, fix it afterwards. And it was, had they been a part of the planning in the first place, probably would help a whole lot more.
And I don't disagree with you, but I will say communications with contractors is a struggle.
Yeah.
You can communicate with the boss,
Yeah.
and then depending upon who he sends out to do that job, that communication sometimes is lost, and that comes
Yeah.
off like an excuse. But it's the unfortunate reality. So like that contractor didn't get paid.
Right.
And that
He
was
didn't
all
get
we
paid.
could do, is basically say, you didn't do what we asked you to do, so you're not getting paid
Yeah.
for this job.
But the damage was already done.
Exactly, and there's no taking that back. So,
Had they known that ahead of time, it might have been that they weren't gonna get paid if they didn't do the job right.
well,
Of course, they should have.
I think the work got around.
yeah, it's, yeah, anytime that we can get somebody involved, I think that makes
Yeah.
the best sense possible. Unfortunately, sometimes with these mowing
I
contractors,
understand reality.
they're not as helpful. And
Yeah.
that, I'll be honest, that holds true for the city. For example, They work closely with us. I'm a city parks director. I'm not gonna pretend to know how to take care of a woodland. But when the city decided they wanted the corner of Frederica for the Bluegrass Museum, they gave us Ben Halls back. So I got 250 acres of woodland in a city park system to manage. So the first thing I did is reach out to our partners here and say, please help me. Please help me understand how to manage this and what to do. And at the time, Jared Hanley was the biologist in our region. And he was super helpful to come out and give us some guidance. But even from his direction, taking that direction back to our grounds department to say, what can we manage with the labor and resources we have and get it done, we had this great plan in place. Well, the first year and a half, even our own city people that got sent out, that were given instruction from the grounds manager, go out there and don't take care of things in the manner that it's drawn literally on a map. So I don't want to say it's just contractors. Sometimes it's even our own people
It's
that's a
reality.
struggle.
That's reality. I understand
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. And recently we did change that plan at Rudy Mines as well. I know Thomas met with Brittany and went out on property with Brittany and our Deputy Director of Public Works and our grounds manager, Adam, and went out there and said, how can we make this even better wildlife habitat than what we have in our primary fields out there, and came up with a different mowing plan that's more of a 3-year cycle plan. That breaks each of those large fields down into big sections. You probably should speak to this. You should probably speak to
No,
this.
it's really just altering your management strategy as opposed to mowing everything all at once. You still mow, just so that it doesn't grow up into unmanageable forest, because that's just natural selection, or natural succession. And so if you take each field out there and say, we're going to mow a portion of it, and potentially even come back and do a post-secondary management strategy where you've mowed. So mow and potentially spray, or mow and potentially disc. Though, or you know, prescribed fire is a big thing for me, but that's a that's a little bit sort of that's a little trickier, yes. But you know, to incorporate that in each field, you're leaving a portion of your habitat out there throughout the wintertime, the harshest period of the year, and then you're resetting a portion of it back. So if they can stagger that across that whole entire Rudy Mines, that'll be really cool. I think they'll see some better results from a habitat and wildlife standpoint. Definitely wildlife standpoint. So regardless of the species that's out there, I mean, because yeah, there's a bunch of native grass. There's big blue stem and Indian grass, which isn't bad. It's heavily dominated. Matter of fact, that was one of my recommendations, is to attempt to thin out some of that grass competition to get some of your forb species present out there. So it can be aggressive at times for folks who may not have been around that kind of stuff. It's not just a mow, it's something else on top of that, you know. So, but that's sort of what I had sort of recommended out there. So we'll see how it goes. So, yep.
Amanda, how often do they mow the edge at the Greenbelt? Is it all done like so many times a year? Or I know you said it was different property owners, so do they have to mow at different times, or does everything get mowed all?
Everything gets mowed all at the same time, with the exception of those areas where the Greenbelt runs into a groomed park. For instance, like that portion of Greenbelt that runs through Fisher is gonna get mowed every week, assuming Mother Nature allows us to mow, you know, because of rain or weather. The rest of it's done, and it's broke up right now amongst 4 different contractors. So the other 15.5 miles basically is split up amongst 4 other contractors right now. So they are paid to mow monthly along the Greenbelt, except in areas that are those primary areas, and they're mowed weekly. So areas immediately around parking lots or main entry access points, so like at Yule's Heritage, at the parking area there, in behind the Heartlands to New Hartford Road. There's not any mowing at Joe Ford. That area through the industrial park, the area in behind Center Court, those are gonna get mowed weekly.
I was out last week and I actually saw some do not mow signs that were out, you know, about this tall in the weeds.
Yeah, if you'll remember anything in the city of Owensboro, we have a property maintenance ordinance that requires everything be, I think it's 6 or 8 inches or less. So when we decide to have any of these natural habitats at any of our properties, for instance, we keep several of those on the golf course as well, we are supposed to sign those accordingly so that the city doesn't get those phone calls of do as I say, not as I do type of phone calls. And that's a little bit of the difference too, I think, with city and county parks. Traditionally, more city parks are groomed, well-kept, 3-inch mows, and that's kind of what my people are typically accustomed to. So this is an area that we're learning as we've gone, and we're relying upon help as much as we can to try to make the best out of a unique situation for our department.
Well, I've noticed, I live near Yellow Creek Park, and I've noticed over the years that it's more and more like our backyard gardens instead of woods. They've cleaned out all of what used to be fence rows. Why? You know, that's usually prime habitat for critters. So, to me, I think they think that's what people want, but I think it's the mentalities that we're not used to thinking about what animals need, and we say, yeah, animals are good, but most people don't understand what's necessary. So I don't know how we need to educate or inform or.
Well, I think from my standpoint, anytime that you can bring something to my attention that you think could be done in a different way, I'm open to hearing all of those things. I don't know that I'll always be able to go that route or that direction, but I want to hear what you all have to say. I want to hear your concerns. I'll take that information back to our grounds manager, and we sit down and try to decide what's the best way for us to move forward at that location based upon the education or the information that we're provided, based upon the resources that we have available to us. And we try to figure out how to attack those in our plan of action with the other projects and things that we have going on as well. So the best thing that you all can do for us is bring those things to us. When you see concerns, when you have concerns, shoot us an email. I've put my card up here. My email address is on there. Shoot me an email with some information. Send me pictures. Pictures are great, especially if I know the location, because sometimes I might not be able to reference exactly what you're speaking, but if you have a picture, it makes it a lot easier for me to take that to that physical laborer who might be going out to address the issue or the concern.
I could visualize a map with places where it says mow strip, you know, just like you're supposed to do. Another place where it says, you know, let this go for 2 weeks, or let this go for all the week, or just do it this way, and let everybody have that map so they can know where to go and what to do, and not leave it to memory, because they'll never remember all this stuff. But I could just visualize a map like that for the maintenance people to know what to do.
And I think did you draw the map that Brittany had for Rudy Mines? Was that you, or did they draw that when you were out?
Otherwise, it's just gonna be the same thing. They'll just go off and cut
provided
everything.
something.
I think you did.
I think so.
Yeah, and visuals are very important.
But Amanda, didn't you just say a little while ago that you can give them a map and still they mow wrong?
They did, yeah, they did. They did. So unless someone's standing out there and like we can ensure that the same person's doing it, it makes it tricky sometimes.
You know, we assume that people can read maps.
Yes.
I mean, I think, and
They can ask
people in this
questions.
group, our age, we assume, I talk to people, the kids, they can't read maps. They have no idea what it means. They go, you know, what is this? And so I could see where you could hand a map to somebody and say, here you go, and they'll go, because they don't want to look stupid, they're gonna go, yeah. And then go right out and say,
Go do what they were gonna do in the first place.
that's right, that's right, I can absolutely see that happening. No idea what north, south, east, and west are.
I have a thought about what Mary Lee said about helping change people's thinking. Is I noticed when you had the list of the uses of the Greenbelt, you know, there was nothing about nature on it. So it would be good if nature, bird watching, or can y'all think of anything? wildflower viewing, I mean, that kinda goes with nature. But any of those things would help people maybe see that there's a reason.
A connection, yeah.
It's not just a place to get from here to there.
That's a great idea, Jan. That's great.
Well, it can be educational too, because I've seen children out, picking up leaves and their parents telling them what kind of trees, if they know. I saw some schoolgirls, one day they were looking for black walnut leaves. Little kids, when there used to be flowers there, would pick the flowers. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And there are some little minnows in the stream that runs on one side, and the little kids love to watch those minnows. I do too. And when I saw woodchucks, I don't know if that's a good thing or not, but I'd never seen woodchucks before. So, but we saw the young ones one summer. So, it's educational too.
Amanda, didn't there used to be a little brochure, I think that Abby did, that said, what the different species were and what you would see along a certain section of the Greenbelt?
Yeah, so there was trail guides shortly after we opened
Right, it was a
the
long
main
time
section
ago.
of the Greenbelt. Right now, we have a trail guide that Abby has written, and it's from, I don't forget if it's east to west or west to east, that's on our website. So if you go to Owensboro Park's website and you go to the Greenbelt page, there's a trail guide, and it's got history of portions of the land and property that the Greenbelt runs through, as well as tree information, wildlife information, and flower information that Abby Todd wrote for us and updated a few years back. So that is on there, and it's something that's kind of been on the list on my desk for a few years with Abby of how do we make that interactive when you're on the Greenbelt. So one thing that we had talked about, and it's just set there because it comes down to time to get to it, unfortunately, is we could easily make some small QR code signs that go out along the
I was gonna
Greenbelt.
say QR
Everybody's
code.
got
If we had
phones now.
someone to help write what those interesting things would be in different portions. So we could take some of what Abby has written,
That sounds
or
like
if
an
there are
interesting project.
particular locations on the Greenbelt that you all know you're going to typically see this, this, and this, then we could easily feed that stuff into a website from the QR code that would go to our website. So everybody has a phone. So you just scan that, and then you can get education, and that education could be provided by the Owensboro-Davis County Audubon Society. And we could give you all the credit for creating that portion of the language if you all were open to looking at helping determine where those locations might be and what that language specifically might be, to help get us started on all of those.
Do you have, I'm sure there are some places, I haven't covered the whole Greenbelt by any means, but I can visualize a wide, wet, big meadow areas where wildflowers could be planted, just have a field of flowers for bees or whoever, whatever uses flowers.
Beyond the open fields at Rudy Mines, we don't have a lot of non-sports programmed green space in the city parks.
Yeah.
In the city park
Seems like
system.
the sports community grabs up every
Yeah.
wide space.
We do have an open field at the front of Ben Hall's Park now. But
People
beyond
love
that open field,
sunflowers, fields of sunflowers.
Oh, yeah.
beyond that open field, pretty much everything else we have is programmed space in the city parks. Now, we don't include Horse Fork, Yellow Creek, or Panther Creek. Those would be Ross's. And he may have some space, a little more
There is
open
some
space.
between Fairview and Black Horse Creek there. On the 54 side, there's some space along there as you go past the pond and the woods.
Before you get to the dairy.
There's farmland to the left, but on the right, there's just space. It's not big, but it's there.
Before you get to Orford Road.
Yeah, before you get to Orford Road.
Yeah,
That's probably the section I'm most.
You're talking about in behind the Heartlands, that area that
Yeah.
runs in behind the Heartlands
Yeah.
between the Greenbelt and the ditch line on
Yes.
the right. Yeah, that, you're right, that area could be.
That could be.
So.
Because one of the